Good morning, good afternoon. How you doing out there today? This is David Robert for the Marketplace of Ideas podcast. I hope you're having a wonderful season of shopping, of getting together with friends and family as we are barreling through December. It is, oh my gosh, at the time of this recording, we are looking at just under 2 weeks before Christmas. So hopefully if you're out there getting those gifts, spending time with loved ones, do so in a happy and fun way, you know? So if I sound a little bit stuffy, it's because I've got a little bit of some congestion there. I'm fighting off the yearly flu that's running around. It's trying to get everybody, so staying strong, but I hope you are too. I just want to let you know before we get started, you can find the Marketplace of Ideas podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're talking Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, you name it, we're there. And having some good episodes. We also have the Adult Fitness podcast, if pop culture is not your thing. Or we also have episodes we have some new ones coming of the of God and Monsters or the Strange Tales podcast. I think I might just go with both names for that one. But nonetheless, we're going to be having some great stuff out there. So look for us into December as well into the new year. Lord willing, we all make it through and have a great holiday season. So today's episode is kind of a fun one. It was something that I was kind of aware of, but really didn't have much of a interest in until I saw how hilarious some people were taking this sort of topic. And the topic we're talking about today is the debate between Jesus and Santa Claus. It's kind of funny, kind of silly, and altogether a little bit weird, but within a lot of circles within the United States and Canada and Europe, there is this raging debate among maybe 10 people that are discussing whether or not we should be celebrating a fat man coming down your chimney versus the Son of God being born on Christmas Day. Now, I want to preface this by saying that if you are a reader of any sort of scripture, Christian-wise, be it the Bible or be it the King James Version or the new NIV versions or whatever version you read within the Bible, within the Christian faith, you'll realize that the book reads like there's a lot of stuff in there that is very difficult to take on face value. That's why people have faith and they have a belief in a higher power. But there's a lot of stuff in there that just doesn't, frankly, make a lot of sense. Yet, for a lot of people, billions of people throughout the world, they follow this faith, they follow this religion, and it gives them the basis for their existence. I myself, I'm a church-going man, been since I was a youth, a young man, young child, and I could definitely see how people could look at the Bible and think that there's a lot of stuff in there that's caused a lot of wars, a lot of conflicts, and so it would, I can get that people would be a little bit perturbed that the celebration of the birth of their Savior is being sometimes upended by the jolly old man Saint Nick. Again, growing up, we had a belief in Santa. My parents never tried to break that away from us or make us feel as though we couldn't have fun with the whole thing. I remember, I believed in Santa up until the age of, I think it was like, I was 8 or something. It was really late for me. But as you get older, you start to realize that the gifts that are being bought, the presents that are being put under the tree are coming from your parents. And then on top of that, we really didn't have a chimney either. So it was like you realized pretty quickly, it was mom and dad putting the stuff under the tree. And it was, mom rushing out to Kmart or Walmart on the 23rd and the 24th to get your gift. So I had a belief in it really, really up until almost 10 years old, which is saying something. And with the internet and everything else, a lot of people could say, how could you believe in something like that? How could you buy into the theory of Saint Nick, old Santa Claus, working at the North Pole with all the elves, and Mrs. Claus, and Frosty, and Rudolph, and all that. And I've explained to people who I've talked to about this sort of thing, is that when you look at where we are during the wintertime, December is one of the darkest months of the year. If you live anywhere on the East Coast, where there's snow, on the West, in Canada and Alaska, wherever, it's cold and it's dark, and you only get roughly under 10 hours of sunlight. And so if you go to work or school, you're going to work in the dark, you come home in the dark, and you're inside during the sunny time. And so seasonal depression is a big thing. People who suffer from anxiety and all sorts of mental illnesses, it can be compounded when you have the cold and when you don't have, that sunshine. People don't account for how much and how good it feels just to feel the sun on your face and to get that vitamin D in your body. I remember when I worked at one of the fitness facilities a long time ago, there was a lady who would come in, and she was half black, and she would get tanned. And she would say basically, hey, I need this for my mood. And I was floored, but upon looking at some research, I realized, holy smokes, yeah, like getting some sun, getting a change of scenery, or exercising, or changing your diet, getting more sleep, all of these things help with your overall health and well-being. And December is a month where there's not a lot going on outside. So if we didn't have Christmas, if we didn't have this end of the year celebration, even if you don't follow it as a believer or as somebody who's religious in any way, it would be very depressing. And so I'm all for the lights. I'm all for the parades and the pageantry and the magic of it all. And yes, you can have that religious connotation to it as well, and it could mean something entirely to somebody else, and that's okay. That's what happens when you live in an open democracy. But when people want to force you into believing something, that's something entirely altogether. So I was never the type to want to burst the bubble of any young child that has this belief in Santa Claus or Saint Nick. And to be honest and fair, it's probably one of the last, and I guess with the Easter Bunny or leprechauns, there's not a lot within our society that still holds on to this sort of innocent belief in stuff that's otherworldly. You might have other religions and faiths out there that people believe in, and some of them are myths, some of them people truly honestly believe, and they have every right to, and some people are no religion whatsoever. They ain't got time for it. But to pit Jesus and Santa against each other is something that I didn't think was even a thing. Because again, growing up in church, our parents talked to us about Jesus, and they talked to us about, Santa. And after a while, you realize, okay, the Santa stuff ain't real, and you got to see the hypocrisy within the Christian faith, where there are a lot of people who look at it as the same as make-believe. That you're telling me that there's a guy up there who has a son, where's the mom? We don't know. Who created God? We don't know. What are we doing here? We don't know. We're here to worship and serve. Okay, well, why? And why is there pain and suffering and all this sort of stuff? And why are people willing to kill each other over this book and what's in it, in the Bible, and willing to end their lives over the message? So there's a lot of questions, and when people who believe in the Bible make fun of or laugh at people who believe in Santa Claus or the Loch Ness Monster or the UFOs, it really means you have to take a long, hard look at your own beliefs in the mirror and ask yourself, look, there's some crazy stuff in this book too. And, I believe it, but I'm also not naive enough to think that people won't think it's crazy. And you have to have that sort of understanding with you. And so, in trying to break the fun, take away the enjoyment of the season by telling children that there's no such thing as Santa and da-da-da, and this, that, and the third, all you're really doing is showcasing that you've lost that belief inside yourself, to believe in something greater than yourself, or to have faith that you can, I don't know, do stuff. It takes a lot of heart to wake up in the morning and to pursue your goals, your dreams, whatever they might be. Whether you want to be a welder, a nurse, a doctor, a parent, somebody who works at a water filtration plant, or you want to be a basketball player or an artist, and you're pursuing that dream, it takes a lot of faith and it takes a lot of willpower, but it also takes a lot of vision. And sometimes the reality is you are not in an area where you can actually foresee your dreams happening. Or maybe you're single and you have been for a very long time, and there's just no one on the horizon, and you're feeling hopeless. Or you've been married for a long time and you still keep trying to have a kid and it's just not happening for you. Or having a business, and this, maybe you've had a third or fourth business fail and you're going for the fifth try. And I believe personally, when you are able to believe in flights of fancy and myth and mythology and things that we just can't understand and comprehend, when you're able to believe in those things, it makes life, I don't want to say worth living, but it definitely allows us and frees us to believe in ourselves, personally. And so, in doing some research for this, I found some interesting articles. I wanted to read one in particular that was a little bit funky. It's really weird what people will go to bat for. But here we go. Let's see if I can find it. Let me see. Okay. That was right here. Okay. Sorry about this. So this was an article written by Vice News. Let me just see here. 1 second. All right, here we go. So we found the article. This was written in the Atheist Republic. So I got two articles, one from an atheist website and the other is from a Christian website, to get two different points of view. And so just let me click on it here. But it's basically a blog talking about Jesus versus Santa. So it says here, this was written by Derek Mathadius, if I'm saying that correctly. And it says, most Christians believe God gave us free choice in order to be able to choose to worship Him. But in order to make that choice, you have to believe in God first. That's not so easy, since if He exists, He hides Himself so well that thousands of different religions, sects, and cults have developed, each sincere in believing their religion is the only true one. So when these same Christians insist that people choose to become atheists in order to sin without repercussion, actual atheists find that concept just plain baffling, since belief and lack of belief is not a choice. If you don't agree, there's a simple test you can do to prove it. Simply try to choose to believe in Santa Claus. Unless you're 5 and still think he exists, you're not going to succeed. We don't believe in God because we haven't seen sufficient evidence for his existence, not because of some concept of sin. Speaking of Santa Claus, when Christians say we should believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ, I have to ask, how is believing in Jesus any different than believing in Santa? This isn't a flippant question. As an atheist, I honestly don't see the difference. Sure, millions of Christians around the world believe in Jesus, but then millions of children around the world believe in Santa. Jesus is based on a historical figure, but then so is Santa. Christians perform rituals for Jesus, like prayer, baptism, and communion, but then children perform rituals for Santa, like writing him letters, hanging stockings, and setting out milk and cookies. Christians claim Jesus answers their prayers by helping them find lost items and giving them guidance. But then children claim Santa answers their letters by giving them toys every Christmas morning. Christians believe Jesus used to perform miracles such as healing the sick, turning water into wine, and resurrecting after his death. But children believe Santa also performs miracles, such as being all-knowing, whether children are good or bad, visiting the homes of all the children on earth in a single night, and fitting through even the smallest of chimneys. Jesus walked on water, Santa can fly through the air. Christians learn about Jesus through books, poems, songs, movies, TV shows, and word of mouth. The Bible, A Christmas Carol, Jesus Loves Me, The Passion of the Christ, David and Goliath, and priests. But children also learn about Santa through books, poems, songs, movies, TV shows, and word of mouth. The Santa Claus book, The Night Before Christmas, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, The Santa Claus, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and their parents. Jesus offers eternal salvation to people who worship him, and eternal damnation for those who don't. But Santa offers presents for children who are good and coal for those who are bad. Christians sometimes see Jesus in grilled cheese sandwiches and stains, but children see Santa in malls and on street corners. Christians are surely sincere in their belief that Jesus exists, but children are no less sincere in their belief that Santa exists. So really, what's the difference? A Christian will likely claim that Santa is made up, that he isn't real, and that children just aren't yet developed or educated enough to know better. But that's exactly what atheists think about Christians and their belief in Jesus. So what is the difference between believing in Jesus Christ and believing in Santa Claus? Apparently not much. Jesus is just Santa for adults. So if you don't believe in Santa, but you do believe in Jesus, maybe it's time to do what every child eventually does, grow up. So this was written, when was this written? This was let me just see here. This was 2014. December 24th, so the day right before Christmas. And then we have, let me see, there's another one here. This one is Christians Today, so Jesus versus Santa. And so this one was written probably around the same time, actually. This is a blog post by an individual by the name called David. Oh, okay. And let's see. My 5-year-old daughter made an interesting comment recently while I was attempting to explain that fairies, unicorns, and tooth fairies are mythical creatures and are not actually real. She stated, "You mean like Jesus and God?" No, not like Jesus and God. And this got me thinking. Should we as Christians partake and involve our children in the mythology of Santa? The truth is we are essentially lying to our kids about this large man with a beard and red clothes, watching them all year round to see if they have been naughty or nice, and sneaking into their homes while they sleep on Christmas Eve to bring gifts. We live in a society that believes that lying for the right reasons is acceptable. As long as it doesn't hurt anyone, it is not a problem. This is contrary to what the Bible tells us. For the scriptures say, if you want to live a happy life and good days, keep your tongue from speaking evil and keep your lips from telling lies. That's 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. Of course, telling our children that Santa is real is not a malicious deception, but it is nonetheless a lie. The magic of a lie. I've had a few conversations with fellow parents with mixed opinions on the matter. One answer I got was, you can't tell them the truth. It would take away the magic of Christmas. The magic of Christmas, all that was going through my head was the magic of telling a lie. Although it is not typical, I have noted over the years that some children honestly feel deceived and betrayed by their parents when they find out that Santa is not real. Children trust their parents to tell them the truth, and it is our responsibility not to break this trust. I know that the works of salvation are stronger than some might think, but if we do break this trust, they may doubt the more important things we tell them, such as the truth about Christ, whom they cannot physically see. I have to admit to it, though, I dislike buying my kids these great gifts, and this fictional character, Santa, gets all the credit. I think children who believe that the gifts they receive on Christmas morning are from a magical man with never-ending resources are less likely to appreciate what they've been given, and the financial sacrifices, such as working overtime shifts, their parents make in providing them. Greed and materialism can overshadow the Christmas season, which is meant to be about giving, loving, and worshiping God. Children whose parents are on a tight budget may feel that they've been overlooked by Santa, or even worse, deemed to be one of the bad boys or girls. A better way, the truth, this guy's saying. I don't want my kids to believe a lie, but neither do I want to face the angry, kindy parents when my daughter reveals the truth to everyone around her. Maybe there is a better way. I started by doing a little research on the origins of Christmas, and in particular, this Santa Claus character. Santa Claus is loosely based on an actual saint named Saint Nicholas, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, who lived in Turkey in around 270 AD. He had a reputation for generosity and stories that were handed down of protection from the likes of thieves and giving food and or gold to the needy. The practice of hanging socks from the fireplace mantle comes from one of these stories. When Saint Nick used to throw gold into the window of a needy family, he tossed the coins contained in stockings. He tossed the coins contained in stockings, or tossed them into stockings hanging on the mantle. I started to collect all the stories I can find into a homemade storybook about the real Saint Nicholas. So should we leave Santa completely out of Christmas? I guess children could still play the Santa game if they know that it is pretend. They could make lists, sit on his lap, and leave milk and cookies out on Christmas Eve. This would not ruin their sense of joy. I look forward to telling our kids about the godly parallels of the real Saint Nicholas, who dedicated his life to serving others and made himself an example of Jesus Christ. And so this was written by Michael Dillienberg. He's an electronics engineer, and he's also a gentleman out of Australia. I don't know if he's a pastor or not, but yeah, so he wrote that back in doesn't have a date here, but nonetheless, that was like two different takes on it. The one thing I find really interesting about the whole debate is that whether you fall on the atheist side or the Christian side or the agnostic side or just the side that just doesn't care, you could tell your child that there is no Santa Claus. You could tell them there's no elves and there's no reindeer and there's no snowman and, there's no magic in the air. And you could also tell them that there's no Jesus. You could tell them there's no God, there's no heaven or hell or anything of that nature. But I think one of the things that I want to do myself is to have your children find out the truth on their own. And whether they choose to believe in the faith that I follow, I hope they do, but if they don't, that doesn't change how I feel about them. And when it comes to Christmas, I fall on the side of if they're having fun with the whole thing and they're enjoying it, there's no real issue there. I don't think the crazy thing about what a lot of people say about not lying to children or letting them believe a lie or whatever is that all you do as a parent is lie to your child. That's all you do. You are given this small, innocent baby, depending on when you receive them or you adopt them or whatever the case is, but you come into their lives and you're trying your best to protect them from the pain and the suffering of the world. So there's some bad stuff out there, and you lie to your child. You'll say things like, they might ask you questions like, hey, what happened to the cat that ran away? It really died, but do you want to tell the child and break their spirit that their cat, its life ended? How do you explain death to a child? Hell, how do you explain death to human beings, to grown-ass men and women? So you lie. You tell them, I'm sorry, the cat ran away. We took it to a farm. It's living a better life. Hey, why does Auntie or Uncle Smith or Joe have a new wife or a new girlfriend? You don't want to tell them it's because of his drinking. You don't want to tell them it's because, the aunt was a horrible person and she cheated. They're not going to understand that. So you're just going to tell them, hey, they fell out of love and they've moved on. Or when people say things like, I tried my best, you damn well know you haven't tried your best. You maybe were doing 40 to 30% on most days. You were dialing it in for a lot of parents out there, because we're in a society right now. We live in an age, as they like to say, where you don't have that level of village anymore to raise a child. So there's an African proverb that talks about how it takes a village to raise a child. And that village could be extended family, it could be teachers, it could be daycare providers, it could be friends and family, whatever it might be. But you have that backing. You have that support. And when you don't have that support, it can be very damaging and very draining. I know for a fact a lot of my aunts who passed away, a lot of the hard parts of raising their children fell on their shoulders. And I don't have any scientific proof of this, but when you're dealing with the type of stress that it takes to raise 2 or 3 children on your own with very little help from a spouse who is kind of neglectful, that'll showcase itself in a lot of different ways, and stress is one of them. And stress could be tied to a lot of diseases out there. And so the hardships of just trying to, even if you have a dual income working household and it's just you and your wife or you and your partner, it's still tough. There's still things that you will not have time to take care of. I was listening to Sheryl Sandberg. She is I believe she's the current or former, I'm not quite sure, I'll have to check, but she worked for Google, and then she was brought on to work for Facebook as the co-CEO, kind of like Mark Zuckerberg's right-hand lady. And I don't know if she's still there, but she basically had sort of like a chart. And she was saying that as a working mom, which she is, you have 3 things that you have to do in the day. So you got your job, you're a wife, and then you're a mom, and then everything else kind of fits in between that. And she said on most days you're going to be able to juggle 2 things very, very well and fail pretty badly on the 3rd thing. So let's say in a week you're working really hard and you're doing great, and you drop the ball as in your job. Let's say you miss a meeting or something like that, and it's just, and you're like, oh man, okay, this ain't working out. Or you have a situation where you're not a very attentive wife when you come home because you're exhausted and you just had one of the toughest days ever, and maybe you had to fire some people or whatever, but you were only able to do 2 of those things. Or maybe you were really good for your health. Maybe you were able to take care of your health, but you know what? You just weren't on the ball with work. And it just didn't jive. So there's a lot of stuff that we try to take on that's just so difficult to do. And we only have enough energy and time in the day to handle a very, very small amount of stuff. And the reason I bring this up is because when people are trying to raise a family, particularly in today's day and age, we just don't have enough time and energy. And so when we're, trying to take care of things and handle things, you're going to lie. You're going to try to reach out and do the best you can, but there are going to be times where telling your child the truth will be more damaging. I'm sorry, telling them a lie will be a lot more helpful than telling them the truth. If they have a father that just doesn't care about them, you're going to lie. And you're going to say, oh, sweetie, he was working late, or, he just forgot, but he'll be there next week for your soccer match or whatever. And you're knowing full well he isn't going to show up. Or if there's wars that are going on right now, when my children are watching TV and a commercial comes on, and they're talking about the war in Iraq. I'm not sorry, the war in Iraq, but the conflict in Gaza right now. And they showcase horrible images of decapitated children and people being lined up and shot. Of course you're going to lie to your child. You don't want to expose them to that. And so this idea that all of a sudden, somehow parents are these saints that we don't, ever say anything that's trying to protect them, it's full of crap. And so if you're going to, tell them a falsehood, tell them something that isn't real, at least with Santa and unicorns and all this other stuff and fantasy, it's something that they could have fun with and enjoy personally. And honestly, if you have a child who were to come up to you and say, I don't really buy all this Santa stuff, but it's kind of, the magic of it is kind of cool and whatever else, that's fine. The argument that if you lie to your child about Santa, they're not going to believe you about other stuff is ridiculous. Because the amount of lies you tell your child in a day, forget the amount of lies you tell yourself in a day. When you're leaving from work, oh, why are you late? Oh, the alarm, traffic. When it was really you just left the house late because you didn't want to, because you wanted to leave at that time. Or, you tell your wife or your husband, oh, I forgot the anniversary. Really, you just weren't paying attention because you care, but it wasn't top of the mind on your list of things to do. But to tell them that would mean you're probably sleeping outside in the garage. So you lie. That's what you do when you have children, unfortunately. And as they get older, then you can be a lot more honest and a lot more open with them. But when they're younger, your main job is to make sure that this small individual or individuals that are in your care stays alive. All the blood stays in them, all their bones stay attached. Everything is, they are alive at the end of the day. They are fed, they are washed, they are loved, they're taken care of, and did you have to lie about, not being able to afford that toy? Maybe you could afford that extra chocolate bar that they threw in the cart when you were shopping. But you said, we can't afford that, and you just chuck it out. And I think the notion of lying to your child when it's something to protect them or when it's something to for fantasy and stuff like that, I think is perfectly fine and okay. I know there are a lot of people that might say you should be truthful and honest with your child, but there's only to a point. Like a great example of this is during the Truth and Reconciliation sort of talks that my daughter was having at her school about what was going on with Canada and how they were founded as a country, and because they were founded as a country, it meant that the people that were living there prior, being our First Nations and Aboriginal brothers and sisters, were ran off the land. The better people with the better technology showed up and broke treaties and stole land, and it was a huge mess. And then in her school they were talking about the 60s scoop, and they were talking about the residential schools and just the horror that went on there. Now, I could explain in great detail, tell my child this is what happened. She wouldn't have a frame of reference. So I told her that what happened was very bad. It was horrible. Children were taken away from their parents because the Canadian government at the time wanted to have First Nations people and Inuit people and Métis individuals and families assimilate into white European-minded culture. And it was doomed to failure from the start, but the terror and the horror that afflicted these children was it was awful. But to explain that to a child at any level of understanding it wouldn't compute. They wouldn't get it. So you tell them what you can that's age appropriate and let them know that what happened was terrible. And as they get older, you explain it, and they'll be able to get a lot more of it. But to say that you can ruin your child's trust in you because you told them a lie about Santa, I have yet to meet anybody whose parents lied to them about Santa Claus and they were emotionally damaged by that. I mean, maybe I could be wrong, but who knows? But I did see a clip that I want to share really quickly, and it was kind of ridiculous. But there was this pastor who was running around telling parents that they shouldn't have their children believe in Santa. And I think this is where my ire was reached, or my anger, or my frustration, was that within the Christian faith, within the modern day interpretation of Scripture, from the Dead Sea Scrolls to the Reformation to Catholicism to the Baptist faith to all the different denominations that believe that Christ is the Son of God and that God created the earth and all of this sort of stuff, there's this almost irrelevant and ridiculous fear that by believing in other entities, or buying into evolution as scientific fact, or believing that the earth is round, or that vaccines do work, and that, yes, all lives matter, as well as black lives, and Jewish lives, and Palestinian lives, and Asian lives, and everybody, somehow that's a threat to churches and to the attendance and to people tithing and believing. And it almost makes you think that this God that people serve and worship is more than big enough to handle the myth of Santa Claus, and that people would go out of their way to point out to people that there is no fat man in a suit riding a sleigh, and not see the irony of, while saying that, also tell people to believe in a God we can't touch or see on a daily basis, that created the world in 6 days, and what else? And whatever else is written in the Bible. Now, granted, I believe it, me personally, as a believer, as a Christian, but I don't fault people for not buying into it, because it does sound crazy. But to point out to people that somehow belief in Santa and the magic of it is going to cause you to, lose people coming to church, or have people singing songs only to Santa on the radio, literally on the radio right now, is the only time you're going to hear any form of references to God or heaven or religion on like regular radio that's not like a Christian station or something like that. It's the only time from the end of roughly the end of October. So, the 1st of November is when you start to see stuff rolling out for Christmas, up until probably the middle of, the first or second week in January is when we start to see the Christmas stuff die down, and then it's into the deep slog of winter. But we see all of this stuff being portrayed in TV shows and secular radio and all this stuff that you wouldn't see 10 to 11 months out of the year. So this idea that pastors and preachers are scared somehow that Santa's going to take the shine of Christmas from Jesus is ridiculous. And all it does is it takes the gospel message and turns it into a joke, because it showcases how scared and frightened people are that other people have different points of view, and somehow that's threatening. And I think that's a really big issue and a big problem that we have, where other ideas, i.e. in the marketplace of ideas, are threatening. Now, it brings me to another point before we kind of wrap things up, is that I don't know where the line is for people to have ideas that are dangerous. So if I have a theory that women shouldn't vote, and which I don't, I feel they should vote, but if there are people saying, well, women shouldn't be able to vote and minorities shouldn't be able to own land and things of that nature, those are very defamatory statements, and they're very wrong. But I feel the only time that these statements actually hold weight is when people act out on them or try to pass legislation. I could have as much of a opinion about abortion or gay rights or Black Lives Matter or immigration, any of these hot button topics that are out there. But when we take them and we try to force them upon people, when it comes to, let's say, for example, if I have a belief about when life starts or who has the right to end a pregnancy, really it's none of my business or concern, right? My opinion has no bearing on what a person does with their own bodies. Full stop. But if I have an opinion about it, that's neither here nor there. That's pissing in the wind. Your dick's in the ocean. Whatever. Who cares? You're farting against a hurricane. But when people try to take those opinions and then put them into law, that's where we have issue. That's where we come to loggerheads and try to battle things out. So I don't know whether or not believing in Santa is going to ruin your faith in humanity or ruin your faith in Christ. I personally don't think it will. I think it's almost hilarious to see people who want to just take all the fun out of everything and, you know, treat something that is literally harmless like it's the worst thing that could ever happen. It's quite startling. I will say that. And I mean, I'll be honest, if I was in a lineup with one of my daughters and we were waiting to sit with Santa and some guy came along from a church claiming that, hey, this isn't real, don't let your kids believe in old Saint Nick, I'd probably punch him in the face. I mean, I'd end up on the naughty list for sure, I'll tell you that. But yeah, it's just, why would you do that? Why would you want to take away fun and enjoyment in a season where it's so freaking cold, you know, and it's so so dark outside, and we have this, like, you know, month-long celebration and time of getting together. Like, you just gotta let people live. Just let them exist. This idea of wanting to tell people what to think and to have people believe what you want them to believe or force it upon them is not how you get people to want to, you know, join your group, as it were. It's through connection, and it's through relationships, and it's through actually genuinely wanting to help people. It's not about you being friends with people only to get them into your church or into your synagogue or into your mosque or into your temple, and then if they don't, well, you know, they're horrible people. It's like, no, people want to be more than just a notch on the church pew that you got them in, and then they're done. So yeah, I think you can enjoy the Christmas season and still hold on to your faith. I think you can get out there and have fun, sing the carols, drink the hot chocolate, which reminds me, we got to get some more eggnog in the house. But you know, and enjoy it rather than turn it into this philosophical existential debate. I almost didn't want to do this episode, to tell you the truth, because it was so silly. But when I saw that pastor preach, like, you know, just walking past the parents, I thought to myself, like, Lord Jesus, if that was me, you know, like, just why would you do that, you know? But nonetheless, hey, you know what? Go out there, enjoy the season if you're able to get with family and friends, and even if you're not, there's a lot of places out there where you're able to get what is known as a blue Christmas sort of gathering, I guess, for people who've lost family members and loved ones, or maybe you've lost a job, or you've been struggling, and because the season can be tough. And I think that's where I kind of want to end it, is that just enjoy the heck out of it with who you can, where you can. If it's just the lights, which are really cool, you know, leave the tree up until the end of January. Who cares? You know, turn the lights on every night. Like, it's just, enjoy it for what it is, and not take it that serious when it comes to, like, Santa and everything else, you know. So yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and until next time, take care and be good to one another out there. Peace.